So, I just wanted to know if you could tell me a little bit more about Women Talk Money. Like, how does the typical session go? How many people are involved? Do you hold things online or in person? And everything like that.
That sounds great. I love talking about Women Talk Money. It is a community that we developed. Right now, we have several 100,000 women who come together on a regular basis, and we talk about what's important to us, the goals that we're trying to achieve, and how to make our money work harder for us. We run a number of different sessions, everything from live events, which are often kind of larger in size, live Q&A, where we just take direct questions from the audience, and workshops throughout the month. And it's really about candid conversations with like-minded women who come together to really figure out what's best for us and how to make informed decisions about our money and our lives so that we are doing everything we can to save and grow what we do.
All right, sounds great. So, in doing this, like running this program for women, what are some overarching themes that you've noticed? Like, is there a specific problem that a lot of women seem to be having that just doesn't really affect men?
So what I would say is it is a community that's available to everybody, and we do have many male allies join the conversation in the community. And it is not necessarily that there are specific things that the regular products and services that are offered are different for women. It's more that our financial journeys are different, and there are fundamental factors such as differences in longevity, healthcare costs, caregiving breaks could be one time, several times throughout our lives, and things that we want to plan for. That this environment creates a real opportunity for people to have real candid conversations about opportunities that they may have, challenges they may face. I think what's really important about it is it's not just about finances and investing. We do talk about career as well. And what's most important is that it's not just, you don't need to be a Fidelity client to join or customer. It's really for everybody. A lot of the themes range from emergency savings and how much should I have, through till how do I plan for retirement? How do I envision retirement? What are those next steps? And how are other people like me doing it? So I would say we really span the gamut and really helping with a focus on women achieve everything in their financial life and then their careers.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was expecting, like healthcare, more caregiving. That definitely seems to like burden women more. Would you say there's any kind of like psychological factors that go into it, like feeling like, oh, money is like a man's game? Um, Anything like that?
So what I would say, yeah, I would say that there, culturally over time, and if we harken back to the beginning of the industry many, many years ago, the financial industry was developed by those and the image of those, and oftentimes, greater than 90% of the people working in the industry were men. Now, fast forward to today, and that has changed a lot. But the reality of cultural issues such as many people being brought up, particularly women, with money as a taboo topic, and not actually coming down to everything from women being more hesitant to share how much they make with one another and really get the information that they need to understand that so they can best negotiate for themselves. As well as then even talking regularly, like often men have and do, around what they invest in and where they invest. Just not traditionally the way that many women have been brought up. And that has continued today. So the ability for women to come together and have those real conversations, it's a judgment-free environment. Oftentimes, having those conversations, you can feel like you don't know enough. This is a judgment-free environment where every question is a great question. Every conversation is a good conversation. And we're able to kind of keep it real and break it down in the way that we all connect and help one another.
Right, and I can certainly identify with that, feeling like I don't know enough to even talk about it, like I don't have enough money to start investing, and I think just in general, women tend to be more insecure and men tend to be overconfident, and this is one of those things where I think that definitely applies. My next question is I noticed that a lot of the stats um, were comparing 2022 facts to 2019 facts. Like, X percent of women feel this way as opposed to X percent in 2019. And do you think this has anything to do with the pandemic? Do you think the pandemic had any effect on the way women spend and save?
Oh, very much so. I think intentionally we wanted to do a comparison across the years because what we saw at the onset of the pandemic and then throughout the pandemic is, I would say, everybody reevaluating what's important to them. But women in particular, we saw did bear a pretty significant brunt, simply because we talk about 75% of caregivers are women. As everything was shutting down, someone had to really step in and take the lion's share of that help. And caregiving is not just for children. Caregiving can be for an important person in your life, a sibling, and or aging parents. And so because of that, I think women really took a step back both in money and in career and in their lives and said, hey, what's important to me? And because of that, really understanding the journey and the comparison to dating back to 2019 and where we've come today, it becomes important to really understand those changes, how people were feeling, but more importantly, how people are feeling today and some of the sentiment around that.
So I imagine that the problems that the average woman faces with investing and watching their spending are even more difficult for lower income women. Could you expand on that and maybe offer some advice?
Of course, and I would hit twofold. I think all women, when I think about when it comes to doing more with their money and taking action, what I always want to say when it comes to investing and or spending, as you just said, we always question ourselves. Sometimes we're our worst critic. And what we found is women actually are phenomenal savers. They're very thoughtful about their spending. And when they do invest, they are and can be great investors. For someone who is living more of in a situation of lower income and could be paycheck to paycheck, there are steps that you can take to really get your arms around your financial house and put yourself in the best position. And I have to say that, one of the things that we really do start with is really understanding how much you're bringing in, as well as getting a record of really where you're spending on things today and writing it down. And a really big part of that is understanding where you owe money, really writing those down and understanding where you owe money, understanding the interest rates associated with that. And then from there, it really is important to take a step back and really think about starting once you have that all outlined. The most important set of things that you want to take care of is where you have those high interest expenses. A great example is credit card debt. Super high interest rate, oftentimes something that you want to be paying off first. So we just recommend that what you do is you write that down and you really keep a log of those things that are really important to pay off first. As you're then really understanding through that budget, what are some of your monthly expenses that may not be as essential so that you can make room for paying off some of that high interest debt that you'd want to get rid of. A great example that I think about is lunch every day. So if you go into the office, many people go and grab lunch every day. That can be sometimes quite an expense on a daily basis. Are there opportunities to replace that everyday expense and maybe bring in lunch a couple of times a week? In no way do we think that you need to cut out all of those little joys. I love going and grabbing lunch. I love going and getting that coffee. And we think you should continue to do that. It's really just being more mindful since you are organizing yourself on really what your spending is and trying to pay off that more high interest debt to create the right balance for you. That makes sense as you get through this time and then really work to grow your income over time. We also have a great set of guidelines that I always like to share that has been really foundational to help folks. So when you're getting your arms around what's coming in and what's going out, on the what's coming in, we typically have guidelines. It's called 50-15-5. 50% is on the essential. That's your rent, that's on your utilities and really eating things like eating at home and some of those high interest expenses that you want to get rid of. 15% is something you want to aim towards, and that's around saving for retirement. If you're in the situation that you talked about where you're lower income, 1% is good. And then growing it even 1% over time and really trying to get to that max of 15%. And if you happen to work for an employer that offers a match, always try to at least save up to that match, because that's free money. And who doesn't love free money? And last, we think about 5%, which is for emergency savings. And I know, particularly when you are running like paycheck to paycheck and really trying to pay off expenses, the hardest thing is to really save for that emergency fund. But with that 5%, what we're really trying to build towards is covering 3 to 6 months of expenses in case something happens. And so what you want to do is really aim towards that, if you can, 5% of what's coming in every month. Lastly, what I'm going to tell you, you're probably adding up and saying, wait, 50, 15, 5 does not add up to 100%. And it doesn't. It actually adds up to 70, and then there's about 30%. For that 30%, what we've said, and if you're lower income and need to, that 30% may get covered. You may not have that space. If you do have a little bit of room, that's where we talk about some of that non-essential or fun stuff that you want to really be making room for. I really like those guidelines, and we continue to update those because it just gives you a sense of, it's kind of a budget, but it's a guideline budget where you're not tracking every single dollar, but you're really knowing where your money's going. And I talked to thousands and thousands of women who use these guidelines. They stretch, but it's been really helpful. And again, you live on the coast, rent is higher, it's not going to be 50%, you might end up at 60%, that's okay. But at least you have those guidelines for wherever your income is that you can try to stick to it.
Yeah, that sounds like really helpful advice. That sort of wraps up the questions I had for you, but if there's anything you'd like to add or emphasize, go ahead.
I'd love to just talk about inviting everyone to the Women Talk Money community. It is a great place, regardless of where you are and what you've done. And as you just said, you don't need to know everything. What you need to do is come and listen, and then when you're comfortable, ask the questions that you have. It's a great place to hear about money and career and similar life experiences that people have, and the questions and how they overcome them and then become more informed so they can take actionable steps. People who join are from across generations, and what I think is amazing about it is we learn from one another and where they are. And so the more the merrier. And as I said, you don't need to be a Fidelity customer. It's free for everybody. And you can sign up at fidelity.com/women.